Good evening, everybody, and a very warm welcome to those attending the Major Applications Planning Committee this evening, to those present in the Council Chamber this evening, and to those watching live on the Council's YouTube channel, Hillingdon, London. My name is Councillor Steve Tuckwell, and I am the Chairman of this evening's meeting. Details of the business to be considered this evening are shown on the agenda, copies of which are accessible online underneath the live broadcast. For those present in the room and intending to speak, please note that you will be filmed and that any statements you make will be recorded and made public. A reminder to anyone speaking today that your voice will only be audible online if the microphone is switched on. In terms of fire alarms, we are not expecting a fire drill this evening, so if the alarm does go off, please follow officers to the fire exits and out of the building to the designated meeting points. Mobile, tablets and devices. For those in the room, please can I ask that you switch off any mobile tablets or devices before the meeting starts, or to put them on silent. Please note that councillors on the committee may be using their laptops or tablets during the meeting to view the agenda paperwork. Okay, that's the Chairman's introductions and domestic arrangements. I'm now going to introduce the councillors and officers present and conducting this evening's meeting. Tonight we have with us Councillor Higgins, who's our Vice Chairman. We have Councillor Duncan, who's the Opposition Lead. We're joined by Councillor Chapman, Councillor Cawthorne, Councillor Dott and Councillor Yarrow. Those are the voting members on the committee this evening, but we're also joined by officers, and we have the Deputy Director of Planning and Regeneration, gentleman sitting on my left there, James Roger. We have the Strategic and Major Planning Officer, Mandip Malhotra. We have the Transport Planning Officer, Alan Tilley. Our Legal Advisor this evening is Nicole Cameron, and the Democratic Services Officer keeping us all in check this evening is Anisha Teji, sat on my right. Okay, we can now move into the agenda proper and start off with agenda item 1 this evening. Anisha, apologies for absence.
No apologies, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to agenda item 2, declarations of interest in matters before this evening's meeting. I'm not seeing any members indicate, so we've got no declarations of interest. To receive and agree the minutes to the last meeting of the 14th of October. Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Chairman. As I've indicated to you earlier, I'm not actually listed as present, and I was, as I proved to you when we showed the video earlier.
We did go back and look at the YouTube clip, and I can confirm that Councillor Chapman was present, so if we could make that amendment, that would be great. So I take it those meeting minutes are agreed with that subtle change. Okay, agenda item 4 is matters notified in advance or urgent, which there aren't any. And agenda item 5 is to confirm the public and private reports. All items this evening are in part 1, which is considered to be public. There are no items in part 2, which is private. The agenda will be taken in the order published, but items 6 and 7 are for the same location and will be taken together, but members will be voting separately on the applications. Okay, that brings us now to the main part of this evening's meeting. But before I hand over to Mandip to take us through the first item, I think the Director of Planning has just got a few words he'd like to say. Over to you, James.
So thank you, Chairman. Yes, it's just to clarify, members may note that the applications for Highgrove House are actually technically minor planning applications. So I just wish to explain to the committee why you're hearing these applications. I can advise that the Council Scheme of Delegation does allow minor applications to be referred to the Major Applications Planning Committee. The actual wording is if by virtue of the level of public interest or by virtue of the economic regeneration benefits of the proposals, they are felt to warrant consideration at the Major Applications Committee. So these applications do have substantial public interest, so do clearly meet the criteria that allows their referral to the Major Applications Planning Committee. I did in this case brief the two planning committee chairmen, so they were aware, as it were, as to the reasons to refer these applications to the Major Applications Planning Committee. So I just wanted to explain to the committee in this case. These two applications are subject to non-determination planning appeal. So in simple terms, we can't determine every application within the government's statutory 8-week timescale, and this can be for a variety of reasons. This particular application had an unplanned event, and then it had to have an officer change part partway through its determination. But if a decision is not made within 8 weeks, an applicant does have a right of appeal, and it's called a non-determination appeal. And when that happens, there are strict timescales for documents to be sent to the planning inspectorate, which can create genuine logistical issues sometimes when we would like a planning committee to agree our decision before we send documentation to the planning inspectorate. In this case, it became clear to me that for the minor applications planning committee meeting scheduled for the 2nd of November, officers were definitely going to have problems completing reports in a time frame that would have allowed them both to be published with enough times for members to consider them ahead of the meeting, and for petitioners stroke applicants or agents to be given a reasonable notice period. So in effect, tonight's major applications planning committee has enabled officers to have enough time to produce comprehensive reports and for all our normal processes to be followed. I will now pass to Mandip to present the applications, Chairman.
Before we do that, I saw that Councillor Higgins just indicated quickly there.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to make sure that, this application is up for refusal anyway, whether the committee will go with officers' recommendations or not. But in future, for this application, this will always come to majors. Is that okay with officers? Because we don't want it to be heard with two different, if it comes back again. Is that a problem?
Good question. So if there's a resubmission and there's public interest in it, and I envisage there would be, because we had over 154 residents sign petitions in this case, that would enable consideration of its referral to the Major Applications Committee. And I do believe in the past, for consistency purposes, we have tried to, once an application is referred to a committee, to then refer it back to the same committee if we've been able to do so. So that would be my kind of initial thoughts in answer to that question, Chairman.
And I would concur with that as well. Yeah, thank you, good question. Okay, all done? Okay, Mandip, over to agenda's items 6 and 7. Over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, members. The application site relates to Highgrove House, so that's the land outlined in red on your screens. There is an addendum. There are two addendums, just to clarify. In the first addendum, we were proposing to add further information in the reason for refusal number 4. The second addendum removes that additional information, so there are 4 reasons for refusal, and the 4 reasons are as per the published committee report. So pages... As published on page 7 on agenda item number 6, and as published on page page 45 for the listed building consent. So we are recommending, had we been able to determine these applications within the statutory timeframes, and this had not been an appeal, we would have refused both planning applications and the listed building consent. The proposals seek permission for a new 3-bedroom house within the grounds of Highgrove House. The planning application is simply for the erection of the single-family dwelling house, which is a detached property next to number 17. We take you through the proposed floor plans for the planning application and the proposed elevations and a bird's eye view of the application site. There are some photographs of the existing properties that have been built within the grounds of Highgrove House. Now, they were granted some time ago. So there are significant neighbour concerns raised with the development. The planning application has 4 reasons for refusal, as I already mentioned. Primarily, it's the bulk scale and mass of the proposed building and its impact on the heritage assets that form not the primary reasons, but one of the reasons for refusal. We then have the impacts of amenity on the adjoining residential property. There is such close proximity with the new build that it just causes blight to the property at number 17, as well as Highgrove House. We then have a lack of external amenity space for the proposed dwelling, which is obviously a material planning consideration. And the final reason relates to ecology matters. So we don't have enough information to fully consider whether there is ecological harm as a result of the development works. The listed building consent, so agenda item number 7, is slightly more complicated insofar as listed building consent has been sought for the erection of a 3-bedroom house, but listed building consent is actually required. The reason the applicant has lodged this is for the removal of some railings to facilitate this new development. The council hasn't received any information to ascertain if the railings are actually heritage railings, and as a result we're not entirely sure whether we actually have to determine the listed building consent. We don't have sufficient information to ascertain if the railings that are being removed in order to accommodate the house are actually curtilage listed or not. And the heritage officer has also confirmed that because of the lack of heritage statement lodged with the planning application and the listed building consent, we're of the opinion that whilst we're refusing the listed building consent, it's on the grounds that there's insufficient information to actually ascertain if listed building consent was even required. But we don't want to miss the opportunity in the event that the inspectorate deems that the railings are listed. I'm sorry that that's excessively confusing. But yes, had we been determining the applications, we would have recommended both for refusal, but we will take these recommendations and the addendums that have been published and send them off to the planning inspectorate as our statement for the planning inspectors to consider. I will pass back to the chairman.
Thank you, Mandy. If you could please, James, thank you.
Yeah, so I was just saying to the chairman, it might help if I just quickly talk members through the location plans, which are an issue that has led to us in effectively having a slightly unusual situation of 2 addendums. So when the first addendum was being produced, the officers had a concern that the location plan was incorrect and included part of Highgrove Woods, and suffice to say that led to various concerns that were originally featured in the addendum and were highlighted in bold as changes to refusal reason number 4. It then became clear today that we received an updated location plan, which I won't talk members through all the red lines and the black lines, but I can if members would wish, but basically it does not include land within Highgrove Wood. As such, that means that we no longer need to alter refusal reason number 4, and in effect we are asking members, put simply, to whether you're happy to agree the refusal reasons in the 2 reports, and then the addendum also includes some consultation responses we erroneously hadn't included in the reports. So effectively, by including them in the addendum, we ensure the inspectorate have all the consultation responses that we've received from all interested parties. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Right, thank you, Mandip. This is the first of our 2 petition items this evening. So I'd like to invite Candice, is it? Candice, your moment now. I'm just going to spend a couple of moments talking you through how this will work. So you have 5 minutes to address the planning committee. You'll see in front of me there's a little traffic light system. When you start speaking, it will go green. It will stay green for 4 minutes. It will then go amber for the 5th minute, and then when it gets to red, I will very politely bring you to an end. Is that okay?
Yeah, I think so.
Good. Okay. Well, we're all yours. So sit back and we'll listen to what you've got to say. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Candice. Good evening, and thank you very much for the opportunity to address the committee tonight on behalf of the petitioners. We had 154 valid signatures against the applications, and we appreciate the Council's time and effort in determining these applications and are in agreement with the recommendation of refusal for both. I have loads to say on behalf of the petitioners. However, most of it has already been received by Council by way of 21 letters of objection, so I'll try not to reiterate it. Position of the proposed building, and not that picture, I'll talk about that next. There's a displayed picture that actually shows the mock-up outline of the proposed building. There it is. That's a to-scale mock-up using the A3 layout that was submitted with the application. That is the exact position of the building in front of the unit I live in, number 17, which has no windows at the back of the unit. The only windows you see are the ones at the front and to the sides of the unit. It clearly shows the close proximity of the new building to unit number 17 and further supports the reasons listed for refusal in relation to loss of sunlight and daylight, overshadowing and encroaching on number 17's front garden space, to name a few. It also highlights the proximity of the new building to the rear elevation of Highgrove House itself. I'd also like to note that on picture 3 on the DAS Planning, Design, Heritage and Access Statement submitted for the application is mislabeled. The picture of the unit there is number 16 and not number 17. Regarding the boundary, if we go to the title plan, please. I know we've just said that it's the layout is correct. If you look at the title land registry, you can see that the border is at the black fence just beyond the picture on the right, and that the red boundary does go into the Highgrove House sink. So I don't know if you can put the land registry title document up on the screen. We did submit a copy of that. Anyway, that includes it's been exaggerated, and it includes a tree, a sycamore tree within the Highgrove Wood sink that's been earmarked to come down. So if we can at all get that out on screen, it would be helpful. The proposed position of the electric parking bay is what we're looking at now, and as it can be seen on the pictures, it's of real concern to residents who live beyond the security of the fence, which would need to come down along with the bollard stopping four-wheel vehicle access. This area is pedestrian, played in by children, within meters of unit number 15, which is to the right-hand side of that picture, and on the wall of flat number 4, which is to the left, sorry, flat number 4 is to the right-hand side of that picture. Turning it into a roadway would be a safety as well as security risk to existing residents, their children, and visitors. It appears that access to one side of the vehicle park there would be prohibited by the brick wall. A very large part of our objection is the ecology on site and the impact the new building will have. The ecology report did not explore the full ecology of the sites, both Highgrove House and Highgrove Wood Sink. We have numerous species thriving here, not only protected species, but also owls, kites, woodpeckers, jays, nuthatches, foxes, and we had numerous starling fledglings this year. They all make use of the site, especially post-lockdown with more people exploring the woods. The animals seek refuge in the proposed site. Protected species on site include badgers and bats. There is also a history of greater crested newts. Not only are the badgers practically on the doorstep of the new building, but bats forage over the proposed site nightly and can be seen returning to the eaves of the Grade 2 listed building. The ecology here is so vast for a small piece of green in the middle of an urban area. This amenity space is a sanctuary, and we implore the council to please help us protect it. It was and still is an invaluable recreation space for home working, homeschooling residents during lockdown and the restrictions that came with it. We even camped out as a family in the proposed site when we weren't able to go on holiday or travel. We spent a weekend camping there. So further to the above, we believe the council has more than sufficient reason to uphold the decision of refusal, and we really hope that this is the outcome of tonight's meeting. Thank you again for your time and the opportunity to speak on behalf of the petitioners.
Okay, thank you very much for addressing the Major Planning Committee this evening. Okay, do we have any questions for the petitioner? No, I'm getting a few nods here, so no questions, and thank you very much again for addressing us this evening. Nisha, do we have an applicant or agent for this?
Not in attendance.
We don't, okay. So we're now open to members to debate these two applications, actually. Councillor Higgins.
I'll make this short and sweet. I'll go with officer's recommendation and propose refusal for 6 and 7.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Cawthorne.
Absolutely support the officer recommendations. However, I will ask a question though. If we are minded to refuse this evening, I'm just interested about the fact it's gone to appeal already, and whether that in any way disadvantages us in this regard, or whether our view as an LPA is still a material planning consideration that the inspector has to take into account. Just a real technical question, I suppose, really.
Sounds like one for you, James.
No, it shouldn't disadvantage us. Effectively, we're trying to follow our normal processes of getting you as a committee to agree our refusal reasons. So these are the 4 reasons we would have put forward in terms of the planning application in any case. So were it the case we were deciding it tonight and the appellant was to appeal in 2 days' time, say, then I don't think that the fact that this is a non-determination appeal in any way sort of disadvantages us, or at least it certainly should not in terms of the PIN's, the planning inspector's decision-making process.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Chapman, and I've got Councillor Dott and Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm more than happy to support the officer's recommendation. Just one point of clarification, though. On the you've got the existing site layout and the proposed one. In the existing one, sort of bottom left, so to speak, there's that rectangular area that the new proposed building will be on. It looks very, how can I put this, car park shape, shall we say, and it does seem to fall around the building. I was just wondering, is it actually designated as car parking, or is that just my fevered imagination? I think if you skip forward a few photos, it would be better to illustrate it. That's the one, Chairman, yeah.
Okay. Okay to come in on that one, Mandy?
There's no reference within the officer's report and assessment that is car parking for anybody within the development, either for Highgrove House or the houses.
Okay, James?
I would concur with what Mandy said.
Okay, good. Okay with that?
No, that's fine, Chairman. It just, as I say, to me it just looks like hard standing, albeit with green leaves on it, sort of thing. So to me it looks like a car park. Thank you.
No, always good to clarify these things. And just to confirm, are you seconding items 6 and 7?
Quite, but I'm happy to if required.
Okay, I'll put you down to second both 6 and 7. Take it in that order. Okay, I've got Councillor Dott followed by Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I'm going to echo my colleagues. Having read the report, all the reasons are clear in the report, so I'm happy to support the recommendations.
Okay. No, thank you very much, Councillor Dott. Councillor Duncan.
Yes, I'm happy to go with this recommendation, but I wonder if Manjit would mind just showing us on this plan. I have been to Highgrove House, but it is not my area. It's not a place that I'm very familiar with, and I would just like to be clear on the plan exactly where this area is, because it's not clear to me from the plans that we've been provided with, I'm afraid, which are these. And so where's the little residential area that that the petitioners referred to this sort of residential sort of passageway, alleyway, where children play, and that there's no traffic, no vehicular traffic at the moment. Where is that?
That's just where my cursor is, at the red dot.
Right. And so where is the car parking going to be? Because that's not shown on this plan, is it?
Just here. Sorry that the red dot is quite faint, but this is the proposed property adjoining directly in front of that front elevation of number 17.
This? Gosh. Yeah, these plans are not the best, really, are they? Thank you, I do understand it. I just wanted that clarification. Thank you.
No,
I'm very happy to go.
You've helped me out there, Councillor Duncan, as well,
Yeah.
so I've got a picture in my mind now where
I'm
everything fits
very
together.
happy to go with officer's recommendation and refuse this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm not seeing any other members indicate, so we are moved and seconded for both applications this evening, but we will have to take the vote separately. So can I have a show of hands, please, for agenda item 6? So that's in favour of officer's recommendation. Yep. Okay, I can confirm agenda item 6 this evening is refused. And can we go with agenda item 7? Moved and seconded. Show of hands, please. With the amendment. Yeah, thank you. So that's unanimous as well. So agenda item 7, Anisha, again is refused. Thank you very much, everybody, for participating in that debate. We'll just let the petitioners go now. You're welcome to stay if you want for the next one, but we'll let you go and we'll get on with the next application. Thank you. Okay, thank you, everybody. That brings us now on to agenda item 8 this evening, which is the Northwood and Pinner Cottage Hospital, Northwood Health Centre, Pinner Road in Northwood. So, Manjit, over to you. Manjit.
Thank you, Chairman. The application before us, committee agenda item number 8, is the Northwood and Pinner Cottage Hospital redevelopment. There is an addendum on this application, so this was the addendum on this application was the one that was published yesterday. Now, you'll note that it's quite lengthy. I just want to clarify that the majority of the addendum is seeking amendments to the conditions. So at the moment, the conditions that we had initially drafted and published related to the entire development site, and the applicants quite rightly have asked for permission to get a dual condition in effect, partly relating to discharge of details for the new health centre, and then a separate condition for any residential condition discharges. So this is really just to make ensure that all the information comes forward at the right time, primarily because we want the new health centre delivered well in advance of any of the residential development that we've proposed. So there is a lot of housekeeping, and I apologise. We will try and capture this in the reports next time. But for the majority, it is tidying up the decision notice in order to allow easier implementation. One of the things I did also want to highlight is the last section of the addendum, and that's correction to 7.09 in the committee report. It was initially reported that there was an amenity space shortfall. Now, this was an error. So you'll note that the beginning of our committee report talks about there being minor conflicts with our housing mix and with the amenity space proposed. Now, having reviewed the amenity space figures, these are gardens, balconies, and communal amenity space within the development. The application actually is providing in excess of the minimum that is required. So there is actually no minor conflict with policy DMHB 18. There is still a minor conflict with the development, which I will take you through, and that relates to housing mix. But when it comes to amenity space, the development is actually proposing sufficient amenity space by virtue of ground floor gardens, balconies, and then communal space on site. So those are the housekeeping for the addendum. We did also pick up that we had missed some conditions, so I apologise. I would like to table a verbal update of additional 3 conditions. One relates to overheating. That was unfortunately missed, so we do need to add an overheating condition which relates to the residential development. We would also like to add a standard condition which relates to automatic light switch off for the new health centre building. These are conditions we have seen in the past, so I apologise for not reading them verbatim. The third condition we would like to add relates to the public footpath. There were lots of resident comments which quite rightly pointed out that there is an existing footpath which runs through the site, and there isn't a huge level of detail in the planning application about what the footpath and enhancements will be. There is some indication of gates on the footpath, which leads from Pinner Road down to Juniper Court and then on to Block B of the development site. So we would like to add a new condition which asks that, notwithstanding the details shown on the submitted plans, we would like the plans to be submitted that show lighting details, ground surface finishes, street furniture, dusk till dawn access from Pinner Road to Juniper Court and Neil Close, and then its additional access arrangements. So we want to see those submitted to the council for approval, just to ensure that they're DDA compliant, they meet secure by design requirements, and also that we will actually have unrestricted access from dusk till dawn maintained between Pinner Road and Neil Close and Juniper Court. So those are the 3 verbal updates. I apologise that this one feels slightly messy. If I take you through the presentation now, the application proposes the partial demolition and refurbishment of the former Northwood and Cottage Pinner Hospital building, which is here. This is the existing health centre on the application site. The proposal seeks to provide 70 new residential units alongside the refurbishment and retention of the locally listed Pinner Cottage Hospital. The applicants, through pre-application discussions, were looking at less retention of the locally listed building, but we have, through negotiation, managed to come to what we feel is a middle ground. We're seeking to retain as much of the heritage assets of the locally listed building as we possibly can, and removing some of those additional extensions that were proposed, that were added to the building later on in time. We've also sought through the planning application negotiations to ensure that the war memorial, which is present in the existing hospital building, will be retained on site and within the new health centre building. So it is a real asset. We do have the Cottage Hospital building, which is a locally listed building. So from national policy to regional policy to local policy, we really did want to see its retention. We also wanted to ensure that it was brought back to life, because it has been closed off and hoarded. The internals are in a very poor state of repair. I don't think I have any photographs of the internals of the building, but we have seen them in the past as officers, and there is very little to retain of heritage value within the internals. So we focused on the discussions around what could we do to bring the building back to life when it was refurbished as a new state-of-the-art or fit-for-purpose health centre to serve the local area. We have some elevation drawings of Block A, and you will see the, oh sorry, going the wrong way. So this is the proposed plans for Block A and the proposed elevations, and you'll note that there are balconies serving each unit, and then you won't be able to see it from this layout, but there are ground floor gardens serving some of the residential units. Proposed elevations for Block A, sections for Block A, and this is Block B. So Block B sits to the northeast of the application site and is accessed via Neil Close and has its car parking along the western boundary. So this is the area which serves which hosts the existing health centre on the application site. So this is the block that will come on stream last, because we want to make sure that the new hospital is delivered prior to any work to demolish the existing health centre to ensure a continuity of health service provision. Block B's proposed plans, street elevations for Block B, further elevations and sections for Block B, and this is the new healthcare facility. So the vast majority of this area is the original hospital building, which is being retained, and we do have some additional extensions proposed on the new health facility. We have dedicated car parking for the health centre, which would now be accessed via Pinner Road. The existing health centre is accessed via Neil Close. We also have a small communal garden provided for the health centre, so users of the facilities, predominantly staff, as well as communal amenity, and this is serving the new residential units. Proposed level 1 for the healthcare centre, so there is a first floor on the healthcare centre, and this is the existing Cottage Hospital elevations. So you'll see from this section of the image, these are the older, more historic facades of the building which are proposed to be retained, and the areas shaded in red are the later extensions which are being removed. Again, this is the elevations of the hospital with the red hashed lines showing the removed areas. These are the proposed elevations of the new Cottage Hospital building. So pride of place has been given to the original local listed building, with any extensions set back much further from the street frontage to be subordinate to the host locally listed property. Proposed elevations for the application site. So this is quite a useful plan, probably would have been better if it was at the beginning, so I apologise. So we have the new healthcare facility would be located on the left-hand side of this plan where I'm indicating. This is the site of block number A, and this is the site of block B. So the plan, there has been lots of local opposition about the timing of this proposal, and I do appreciate that construction work will take some time. But we do want to ensure continuity of healthcare services, so we are actually asking that no work is done to this area of Block B until the new hospital is actually open and functioning and providing GP services. And that's primarily to avoid temporary huts in some other third-party location, or a lack of facilities for GP services. So this hospital needs to be delivered, this new GP service, needs to be delivered first. Block A is able to commence its construction, but Block B would not come on stream until the hospital was open. This parking area along the frontage is to serve the new GP surgery, and is accessed from Pinner Road. There is a small access point which serves both Juniper Court and will now serve Block A's residential parking area. The other vehicular entrance into the site is from Neil Close, and that is serving all of the residential properties in Block B. There has been significant objection from Juniper Court, primarily because their parking is here, and I will take you to the photographs which do show the parking area of Juniper Court. But this is the actual dedicated parking spaces for Blocks A. This is a site-wide roof level plan, proposed site-wide elevations. You'll note from here that we are marginally taller than our surroundings, but we are not by any means a tall building. So we have sought to try and ensure that the proposals aren't out of keeping with the character. I know that there are lots of objections that the proposals are not in keeping with the street scene, but this is an optimum site for residential properties, as long as we can get the new health centre provided. If I take you through, this is the bird's eye view of the site, so you can see the roof form of the former Cottage Hospital, and that's the existing health centre that would be demolished later on. This, for reference, is Juniper Court, so it has car parking in this area. And then, for reference, because it's referenced in the committee report a lot, this is Sovereign Court. This is the frontage elevation of the locally listed building, which would be retained and improved. The section you can see in the distance are the extensions which would be removed. Another photograph of the application site. So this is the existing healthcare facility in the northeast of the application site, which would be demolished at a later phase to accommodate Block B. Again, the entrance into the Northwood, the existing health facility. Another photograph of the site. So, just for information purposes, it's referenced a lot in the neighbour objections. The ambulance service have actually been using the car park of the former Northwood and Pinner Cottage Hospital for car parking for some time. So it has been overspill parking. I don't believe it's in use any longer, and the ambulances are kept overnight in other locations. The application site, more photographs of the side of the Cottage Hospital building, the site and surroundings. Pinner Road. The application has been recommended for approval, but it must be noted that there are some minor conflicts with policy insofar as the development only proposes 1 and 2 bedroom units. It is a minor conflict, however, the benefits of this scheme are significant. We are able to deliver a new health facility, and it's not just a new health facility, but it's also a slightly larger and enlarged one, and also fit for purpose. The existing building is somewhat dated and in need of replacement, and finding the facilities in refurbishing the locally listed building are a key advantage of this application. I would also note that the application is not proposing any affordable housing. Now, we have thoroughly investigated the applicant's viability appraisal, but in order to cross-subsidise the new development of the hospital facilities at the former Cottage Hospital building, the application is unviable. However, the benefits do outweigh those minor conflicts and the harms, and we are recommending this application for approval. I will hand back to the Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Mandy. Did you want to add anything to that, James?
I was just going to just quickly clarify what members are being asked. So it's the Amanda did reference various times the conditions in the addendum, 3 additional conditions which relate to overheating, which you regularly see on residential schemes coming to the Major Applications Planning Committee, the electronic light switch off that we do on sort of public buildings, so that would apply to the doctor's surgery. Mandip explained the pedestrian footpath links, and I was just going to say, it might help, Mandip, if you just clarify the planning obligation AI, exactly what we're putting to the planning committee, because there's been quite a bit of correspondence between the council and the applicant on that, and I think it's important members are clear how the very first term is structured. But before Mandip does that, I would emphasise that the second term in the section 106 is an affordable housing review mechanism. So if there are changes in the future and this effectively that review mechanism means if there's a delay in the scheme coming forward, we are able to then review whether it can in fact deliver affordable housing in effect. But I won't go into that detail because there's a quite complex standard wording that applies to that we do in all development proposals. There's really just a flag that it is there. Thank you, Chairman.
Apologies, yes, I did talk extensively about Block A being able to start some form of building work, but Block B must not start until the new hospital is delivered. So I would like to ask for an amendment to the recommendation A1. So as it's seen on page 52, the recommendation as drafted would not enable any residential development to be built until the new healthcare facility in the former Cottage Hospital is actually operational. Now, we already know that they require cross-subsidy in order to deliver the new health facility, so that felt overly restrictive. So what we are seeking to do is to change AI to allow for the construction of Block A, but still restrict any construction on Block B until this new health facility is open to the public. So that's a minor variation that would go into the legal agreement. We feel that's sufficient to safeguard health services within the area without blighting and preventing the sale and cross-subsidy to actually fund the works. Before I stop talking, I also just wanted to point out where the footpath was that we referred to for the new conditions. So there is an existing footpath which enters from Pinner Road, goes through the application site and provides access at present to Juniper Court, and in its current iteration it also provides pedestrian access into the existing healthcare facility. So the new condition that was proposed and tabled earlier on relates to that area of footpath for which we don't have a huge amount of information. We do want it maintained and retained to enable Juniper Court residents not to have to walk all the way around Pinner Road by Neil Close in order to get to their property. This would be a much more direct access which we are seeking to retain through this planning application. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you for that, Mandip. Lots to take in, a few addendums as well, and a few verbal updates. I'm sure members have made note of those for the discussion later on. Okay, now we are on our second petition item this evening. So I've got Andrew Riley. Good evening and welcome. Again, just to explain to you, you've got 5 minutes to address the planning committee this evening. There's a traffic light in front, green for 4 minutes, amber for the 5th minute, and then when it gets to red, I'm going to have to bring you to an end. Members may wish to ask you some questions at the end of that as well. So when you start speaking, the clock will start.
Good evening, my name is Andrew Riley. Tonight I represent both Northwood and Northwood Hills Residents Association and the residents of Juniper Close. Let me be clear from the start, none of us are against the additional health provision. I don't believe anyone disagrees with that. However, most letters of support relate to the health centre only. If there were 2 separate applications, that would still be the case without letters of support for the separate residential development of this scale and intensity. The London Plan Part B, Policy H4, states that affordable housing should be provided on site and only provided off-site as a cash-in-lieu contribution in exceptional circumstances. Policy DMH7 also requires this. The London Plan policy sets a threshold of a minimum of 35% affordable housing, only in exceptional circumstances where on-site provision of affordable housing cannot be delivered, and as a last resort, a financial contribution would be required. That is not the case here, and they are using the hospital, which is non-residential, as part of the financial study of the residential development. So this is not an exceptional except for financial purposes. It is clearly not for planning purposes and clearly should not be accepted by this planning committee to approve this application. If the committee did this, it could well serve as a precedent to all other developments. However, if two separate applications were made, then affordable housing could be provided in the residential development. And these proposals, just 7% of the flats will be 3 bedrooms. The proposed housing mix does not meet with the policy requirements of DMH2, H10 of the London Plan in terms of responding to local housing needs. Where the applicant is unable to provide sufficient number of family-sized units, they must demonstrate why this is the case. They have not. Paragraph 4 of the Hillingdon Local Plan, Part 2, Development Management Policies 2020, states the housing needs indicates a substantial borough-wide requirement for larger, affordable and private marketable units, particularly 3-bedroom properties. Here, only 7% are being proposed, but many more than that could be provided, but providing less flats. The planning officer suggests this is a minor breach. We strongly object to the word minor. The planning officer states that it is considered the proposed buildings would have a scale and built form that is compatible with the streetscape at this location. However, none of the adjacent properties are of this height. What is proposed is a clear overdevelopment of the site. Block A of the proposed flats will be taller than any other building in the area. The applicant's examples of buildings this tall are miles away. Indeed, one is in a different local authority. Planning North has recently refused applications to raise the roof heights of nearby 53 to 55 the Broadway, 54 to 56 Joel Street, and you'll recall 117 Pinner Road. There was all sorts of problems with that, and the council moved to knock it down unless one of the conditions was the roof height was reduced. The report identifies it is not possible to fully meet the BRE guidelines, with just 88% of windows achieving total sunlight. So again, an indicator of overdevelopment. In the neighbouring property of Sovereign Court, out of 66 windows, 13 will fall short of the target values. The officer states there will be a loss of light to Juniper Close residents too, but states this is acceptable. Surely that is against the human rights of residents and is not acceptable. There is a children's space requirement of 280 square metres, which will be half located within the roof terraces and on balconies. This is something the council has resisted in the past. Play areas are for children is where they can throw balls and catch balls and run around. This cannot be done safely on balconies, and also we believe the roof space, which again shows cramped overdevelopment. Surely a safe environment is required for children. Northwood Hills has a PTEL of 2. The parking standard here is stated to require between 70 and 105 spaces. Only 69 are to be provided, including disabled spaces, 3 of which will be located in the car park on the health centre, which could easily mean that this is where visitors to the blocks of flats will also park because of free access. That will be the case even after the residential site is sold off to a developer. It is a further sign of overdevelopment that just 3 more car parking spaces cannot be located within the residential site. Hence, the residential site does not comply by itself, and the car parking will not be located within its own site once sold off. The report admits that pedestrian and cycle access has not been reviewed thoroughly enough. Why not? This surely could impact residents. This is a very clear overdevelopment, the wrong housing mix, and fails to meet many policy standard requirements. We strongly request refusal. And in closing, I would mention that David Simmons advised on the 4th of November that one of the things he has recently suggested to the NHS as part of this development should be retirement development, but those discussions are at a very early stage. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Crammed an awful lot in there to your 4 minutes and 45 seconds. You can take a breath now. Thank you. Okay. Before we open it up to members to ask questions, I just wondered, there's a couple of points here in relation to the affordable housing shortfall. James, I don't know if you wanted to pick up or Mandy anything on that. I was going to just pick up any questions first before we open it up to members. That's possible. And then I'll open it up to members.
With respect to affordable housing, if any developer isn't providing policy compliant affordable housing, they're required to do a financial viability appraisal. What we do as a council is we then refer the appraisals to external consultants with expertise in financial viability. They then go in detail through the appraisals and share with us their findings, which are in this case that they are satisfied that appropriate inputs have been put into the viability appraisal, and that the outcome in effect is that the development cannot provide affordable housing. But there was a point I just wanted to say that I think might help members. So the petitioner did say at one point that this could create an unacceptable precedent. In effect, this is alluding to the point of accepting a scheme that isn't delivering affordable housing but providing a health centre. Committee has done this once before, so I just want to reference that. So on the vinyl factory, there was a phase of the vinyl factory which did provide a healthcare facility, 900 square metres. With respect to how that was considered in terms of affordable housing, officers were quite transparent to the committee that it was substantially reducing the affordable housing offer. So there was some affordable housing through that particular phase of the vinyl factory, but it was substantially reduced as a result of the provision of the healthcare facility. The slight difference here is that we're satisfied that the applicant can justify a nil affordable housing contribution, albeit, as I said earlier, if there is a review mechanism proposed in the legal agreement, so if there are delays in the scheme coming forward, we can get that situation reviewed again, in effect, Chairman. I'll leave it there for now.
Okay, thank you. And there are a number of other points that I'm sure members will pick up. I've got quite a few listed down here. But I'm now going to invite members to ask Mr. Riley any questions following his address to the committee. Any questions? No? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Riley, for your time this evening. We now move on to the same process, but for the applicant this evening. So I've got Mr. Richard Ellis, is that correct? And is it just you speaking tonight, Mr. Ellis, yeah?
No, Chair, I'm joined by my colleague Andrea Obiol from the Architects.
Okay.
And we'll share the 5 minutes.
Okay, just to let you know, you've still got the same 5 minutes. So I won't go through the whole spiel again. The traffic lights are in front. So when you start speaking, the green light will come on. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair and committee members. My name is Richard Ellis. I'm Joint Borough Director for NHS Hillingdon within North West London CCG. And as I say, I'm joined by the architect, Andrea. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present the NHS proposal for a new healthcare centre supported by residential housing at the former Northwood and Pinner Cottage Hospital and Northwood Health Centre. We believe local residents and local services need modernised healthcare facilities. We need to respond to the NHS long-term plan by replacing and refurbishing existing NHS buildings wherever possible. We need to address the needs of our growing local population, and as our residents grow older, we also would like to deliver more services locally to where they live. Patients tell us that they want to access several integrated services in one building, and in this case it would be mental health alongside primary care, alongside community services. And we need to build on our present and future ambition for new and more flexible ways of healthcare working, supported by more staff moving into primary care to work there. So we believe that funding improved facilities at Northwood and Pinner through the sale of residential units on the development is appropriate for 3 main reasons. One is, as we've heard, the existing Northwood Health Centre was constructed in the 1960s and is considered no longer fit for purpose for delivery of modern healthcare. It has poor building performance due to outdated electrical and mechanical systems, and that leads to higher maintenance costs and running costs and less sustainable building. The second reason is the current clinical rooms are small, they're not flexible enough, and they don't offer enough circulation space for patients and clinicians in a safe environment, which we've obviously discovered in the last year during the COVID pandemic. And third, the cost of maintaining this existing health centre will only increase over time as the building ages further. The formerly much loved, much treasured Cottage Hospital is unfortunately now largely derelict, and that adds to the problems of the local site. So in conclusion, Chair, this proposal now provides the funding opportunity to rationalise the existing healthcare facilities, to refurbish the Cottage Hospital site and develop a modern and much more usable building for the future care of the local community. We have endeavoured through consultation with the existing healthcare professionals and the commissioners, and with input from members of the local community, to ensure that the new health centre meets the needs of the local population. And we hope that you are able to support your NHS in the acceptance of this application to deliver the necessary and required healthcare to local people. Thank you. I will pass over to Andrea, my colleague.
Thanks, Richard. Chair, members, thank you very much for the opportunity to respond to some of the points that you raised about the scheme. The new buildings sit within a garden landscape that has been considered carefully to provide both visual amenity and place for the enjoyment by the residents. In conjunction with timber fencing and garden walls, it will also provide a screening to the neighbouring properties. And over 100 new trees will be planted to reinforce this garden setting, which will mature over the years and provide a long-lasting natural environment. We have attended extensive consultations with the public and had very useful pre-application discussions with your planning officers over the last 18 months, and with their guidance, the designs have evolved and concluded with the architectural design presented in the application before you. There have been observations raised during the planning application process that the 4-storey height of the proposed residential buildings amounts to overdevelopment for the location. However, there are several examples of buildings of similar height in the neighbourhood, both on the Pinner Road towards the junction with Cholo Street, but also adjacent to the site. Juniper Court, immediately to the north, have 3 occupied floors, and Sovereign Court, immediately to the east, have 4 occupied floors under the pitch roof. Our proposals also have 3 occupied floors, but in our case, we have also used the benefit and the shape of the pitch roofs to allow an additional floor of residential accommodation, together with a discrete location for air source heat pump equipment, so that we can meet current sustainability targets and building regulations. The form and appearance of the buildings and the selection of materials has deliberately been chosen.
I'm going to have to ask you to draw to a close now. Yep. Apologies for that, but we're in a statutory process, so okay. Thank you very much. Okay. Right, we've heard from the petitioner, we've heard from both the applicants here this evening. A number of points have been covered off. Who wants to kick us off with some? Yes, sorry, debate for a question for the applicant. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Thank you, Chairman. We're all in favour of having a new health centre. That's not really a problem, and we do support the NHS as much as we can. My problem here is you talk about costs. So how much is the health centre element going to cost to be built? Can you tell us that? Just the health centre element, how much is that? Your estimated cost. I mean, you said that you've costed this out, so I just want to know how much that bit will cost to build.
Cost plan is stage 3. Am I allowed to disclose? At the moment, the cost plan is around 5 million.
Just for the health centre?
For the health centre.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Rob. But just to remind members, we're at questions to the applicant. I've got Councillor Yarrow followed by Councillor Duncan and Councillor Cawthorne.
I think I was going to ask the same question as has already been asked, but is that the microphone doesn't seem to work very well in here unless you've got a loud voice, and I wasn't quite sure what your answer was. Is that the funding that the health service are putting in to rebuild this health centre, or is it a partial funding to kick-start it?
The amount I said is what we know at the moment is the cost plan for the for the centre. I cannot answer about what the funding is. That's I'm the architect, so I'm working on the other side.
Yeah. Yeah, go on, Henry.
Sorry, through you, Chair. The question I asked was how much is the health centre going to cost, not how much the NHS is going to provide.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry. Okay, sorry.
Okay.
Come on, get on. I was interested in what the amount of money that was available from the NHS to actually start this scheme, because clearly they want to have a partial build of the residential at the same time as the health centre is being built. What is the split between the two? Who is going to provide the funding to get going with the health centre, which is the first thing that has to be built? And I'm assuming that will come from the NHS.
Shall I try to answer that?
If you can try and pick that up.
Sure,
Please,
yes.
Not sure it's entirely a planning matter, but okay.
I can try to. And I absolutely support the direction of the member's question, because that balance of capital costs and revenue commitments of a future times is absolutely at the heart of what the NHS is trying to solve. Clearly, within the application today, it's the capital cost funded by the residential units, which enables the building to be delivered. The revenue, the staffing, the ongoing costs of the health centre and the GP surgery are within existing NHS budgets, currently being provided, and clearly we will be making provision for the new and additional staff, the additional running costs that are required. I'm not sure that I've got available right now those projected revenue costs, but we'd be very happy to take the member through those at another time.
Okay, thank you. I've got Councillor Duncan, followed by Councillor Cawthorne.
Yes, well, I think we know as a committee that costs are not a matter that we consider. They're not a planning matter. But I appreciate my colleague's concern in that we don't want to approve something and then find a load of flats have gone up and no health centre is forthcoming, because we have actually seen that scenario in Hillingdon, and we are very careful that we do not want that to happen again. The prime focus for us, I think, would be the health provision and, if I heard right, increased health and updated health provision being provided for existing and any future residents. So it's not about the amount of money, but how the development would be secured. And I understand that is through the agreement and the phasing that officers have put before us. My question was a more detailed one, and it relates to Block B and the distance to the rear of properties in Neil Close. And I see that on the north east corner, in bedrooms there, in the single bedrooms, that translucent glass is provided at the front window, and then there are oriel windows with two very small opening sections at the side in order to allow some ventilation and clear view in. These are really quite minimal standards, the kind of thing that we're not usually very happy to accommodate unless we absolutely have to. I can see why that's happened and why you've taken balconies.
Sorry, through you, have you got a question for the petitioner?
Yes, I have.
Oh, sorry, yes, right.
Yeah, I think Councillor Duncan was having a bit of a preamble there, so
yes,
carry on.
Exactly. Setting that. And we can see by the balconies have not have been approved either or proposed. But what's proposed with these windows, there's no means of escape in case of fire through those. They look far too small, and maybe the architect could respond to that, because if there was fire on the other side of this building and, you know, the fire's going up, say this was on one of the upper floors, and you've got to get out, you would not be able to get out.
Well, we have the right person to answer that question. We have the actual architect for the building
yes,
in
I'm
the
very
room,
glad
so
she's here.
I'm sure we're all ears on that one.
the fire strategy for these buildings never assumes that you will go out of the windows. So they have, there will be a sprinkler provision, and the escape is through the entrance door and then straight into the stairs at the north. That's the escape stair, and then you escape directly on the ground floor. So for the ground floor, they just go out, and for the first floor, you go to the escape stair and out like a flat on the other side. The proposal is never that they would escape through a window.
But
from a fire perspective.
Yes, I don't want to get into an argument about this, but you may have seen that there was a thing about the London Fire Brigade very concerned about the standards to which modern buildings were being built that did not allow this. You have to allow for fire occurring anywhere, and traditionally people have got out through windows and all kinds of means of exit, because you have to assume that fire is not going to occur where you want it to occur, but where it actually happens through, the kitchen or something, which is on the other side of this. So if there's a fire and you can't get out and get to the staircase, you're trapped in that room. And that's why they have these things to get up and get people out of windows.
Yeah, totally. But in terms of, but the buildings are provided either with the sprinkler systems, with a correct detailing of external walls, so fire will not go from one flat to the other. So in terms of a strategy of escape in a building like this, it's not considered that you would use the window, because, for example, someone from the third floor wouldn't be able to do that. So, as I say, there is a corridor that is protected, and it gets onto a protected stair, and that takes you to the ground floor. And also the strategies are they are compartmentalized by flat, and it's only the flat that has the fire that would escape and wouldn't extend to the others.
I do understand that, and I'm not envisaging that people are going to be flinging themselves out of third floor windows. This is when the fire brigade arrives and has a fire appliance that can reach them, but they wouldn't be able to get out, would they?
But
I think
they would be getting through the corridor on the south of that.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I understand.
I think if members share a similar concern, I'm sure we could look at conditioning the size of the windows and make sure that's also included in the fire strategy plan, which is in part of the application.
I think it's difficult. That's why I raised it, Chair, because it's just two very small side openings that people could not get out of. That's why I raised it. Thank you.
Okay. No, thank you.
Can I mention something? If the windows on the front are translucent, if that was a concern, that window translucent could be operable in a case of emergency.
Okay.
Or isma.
Thank you very much for raising that. I've got Councillor Cawthorne.
Thank you. Yes, a couple of questions relating to engagement. I'm pleased that the North West London CCG within the ICS has engaged with practices in shaping the proposals. However, I would ask whether that engagement is extended to social care partners as well within the ICS, because I know certainly the emphasis is very much on promoting independent living at home as far as possible for as long as possible, and yet there are C3 units being proposed here. So I'm just wondering whether Hillingdon's social care team were any part of that process in bringing forward these proposals. That's my first question. Second one is really, given what we're hearing from local residents and given how much has been made about the engagement that's taken place, I'm wondering what, if anything, has changed about the proposals that have come forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I take the first one? And
yeah, if you could pick those up between you, that would be great.
Thank you. So I absolutely agree with you. The local Hillingdon team and the North West London Integrated Care team see the local authority and the social care team as absolutely key partners. I think I've today been in 3 separate meetings with social services officers, and that is absolutely runs through the backbone. The detail of social care input into these consultations, I'm afraid I'm not directly aware of. and maybe the architects can advise us. But health and social care are working as one on this development and on future strategy. So we'd be delighted to give more detail on that another time.
Are you okay to pick up the second point, yeah?
Yeah, sorry. In terms of the how it has changed over as a result of consultation, we started consultation in, I think, March 2020. So the residential mix has changed as a result of that, and the 7 3-bed units have been incorporated, and they didn't exist at the beginning of the discussions. Also, more recently, the massing of the buildings, of the residential buildings, has been discussed quite in detail, and we have done quite a few iterations of the design to work within the roof space to make the building more in keeping or as a result of feedback to take more cues of the buildings in the surroundings. We also have reviewed how, for example, the appearance of dormers and tried to kind of bridge between what the desired appearance is and regulations such as kind of having the right depth for insulation, etc. Does that respond?
If that's your answer, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Duncan. Again, this is questions to the applicant, so a good opportunity. Did you? No? Okay. Any further questions to the applicant? Councillor Higgins.
I think it's only fair for clarity that you've said that the centre has cost 5 million, and how much do you think that the revenue will be for all the flats?
Either of you able to pick that up?
I don't have the information, the cost information for the flat.
Something officers might not be able to comment specifically on, but certainly in the financial viability assessment might be able to offer something on that one. Yeah. Okay. Councillor Duncan, you do want to come in now. Okay,
yeah,
over to you.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. I noticed that you're putting in charging points, a fast one for the health centre and a normal one for residential. This is for electric vehicles. What do you categorise as normal?
That would be, I don't know if our transport consultant can help with, I mean, the standard would be the charging electricity. I get advice on that. I wouldn't be able to tell you what is the standard or what is fast, but that's how based on that advice, the MEP consultant will size, for example, the substations and the requirements to provide that. I don't know exactly.
Yeah. As long as it's not less than 7.
Yeah, it won't be.
Which is a normal, I think normal for residential vehicles. You can have it greater than that, but as long as it wasn't less than
it will, in that respect, I apologise, I don't know the number, but
okay.
it is based on what the London plan requires for a standard vehicle, a standard charging or fast charging.
Would you like us to write separately to the member through the officers with that specific detail?
Oh, we're back on now. I had a technical problem with my my equipment. We've got, to help that conversation, we've got a resident expert on all things electrical charging in Alan Tilley. Do you want to just pick up the point and give us some specifics on the difference between normal and fast charging?
Thank you very much, Chairman. For the residential electric vehicle charging points, we would expect units that are able to charge a vehicle overnight. So that would be a maximum of 8 hours. We particularly welcome the rapid electric vehicle charging points for patients and visitors using the health centre, and dependent on the type of car, they can charge in up to now 40 minutes. Thank you, Chairman.
Is that useful?
That was fast. What was normal, Alan?
Overnight, 7 or 8 hours.
Yeah, and would that be at 7?
7
kilowatts or whatever they are, these, you know, the output from the thing.
Getting into technical stuff now. Yeah. 7 kilowatts?
Well, Alan will know, I'm sure, if he's the expert.
Thank you, Chairman. I believe it to be 40 to 60 kilowatts, but I can inform committee that the very highest spec are now 150 kilowatts. But you have to have a pretty new car to be able to accept that amount of charge. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Right. Last opportunity to ask the applicant any questions. I'm not seeing any members indicate. Okay. Thank you very much, both of you, for addressing the committee this evening. I can see a ward councillor at the back there who gets slightly less time than petitioners and applicants. Don't ask me why, but 3 minutes, Councillor Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In my role as a ward councillor, this is a complex and not a straightforward application in my view. On the plus side, this building is in a pretty poor state. In the entire time I've been a councillor, which is nearly 8 years, it's not been occupied. I do not have a problem with the principle of this development. It's on a brownfield site. It's where we should be providing new homes. I also, obviously, as other people have said, support the new medical centre. It's extremely important for the local community. Furthermore, I welcome some of the conditions that have been added, such as the medical centre needs to be occupied before the homes are occupied. I'm pleased to hear about the pathway between Juniper Court and Pinner Road being opened up for residents of Juniper Court. I'm also pleased about the retention of the War Memorial. So those are all the positives as far as I can see. However, there are some serious negatives here. Firstly, there is the amount of residential units that are being crammed into a fairly small site. 70 residential units in a small site. I do believe this is pretty close to overdevelopment. I visited Juniper Court. I've met the residents there. People should know Juniper Court is a block of flats for elderly people primarily, average age of 82. And I saw at first hand the impact that this would have on those residents around overlooking. As we've heard from officers tonight, this proposal is significantly taller than some of the surrounding buildings, including Juniper Court. So I feel that is an issue. No doubt the viability issues are driving the number of units and the height, but that is a factor. I'm also concerned, as we heard from Mr. Riley, about the parking provision. Fewer parking spaces than the number of residential units and the impact of traffic on particularly Neil Close, which is a pretty small road. I would, if committee is minded to support this tonight, I would emphasise the need for robust conditions on landscaping and parking spaces, particularly for those people visiting Juniper Court. But I do have concerns. There are positives. It's a bit of a mixed bag, but my concerns are significant. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Flynn, and well in time as well. So thank you very much for that. Okay, we're now at the point now where we can open. Sorry,
Councillor Bianco's, didn't he give some comments? Or? Yeah, he didn't send it through the. Yeah, okay. Thank you. Right, well, we've heard a lot. There's been a lot of debate before we even get to the main debate on this particular application, and rightly so as well, and rightly so. We've heard from the petitioner this evening who's talked through a number of aspects around affordable housing, the unit mix, the size, the sunlight, children's play area and car parking. We've equally heard from the applicant who's talked about its unique funding opportunity. It is a significantly enhanced facility that will be provided to our community, and there's been extensive pre-application discussions and a revision from the original scheme previously. And we've just heard from the ward councillor who's given us an overview about some positives
for the community, but also some not so positives from that perspective in relation to the feeling that it's overdeveloped and crammed. So there's a lot that members have got to get their heads around in terms of opening this debate. We've heard from ward councillors, applicants and petitioners. So it's at this point now that we can have the discussion. Councillor Higgins, followed by Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Chairman. There's quite a lot in here, to be honest. I don't want to probably take other people's thunder. My concern here is it's not a planning concern, and I'm probably going to get shot down by legal about this, but the problem that I got is the cost of the centre is 5 million. I've been in business all my life. I'm just trying to work this figure out. So the first block, we're talking about block A, has to generate £5 million to build the centre. But what we're saying is that they can't be sold before the centre is built. So we're asking a developer to come in, because the NHS is not going to do this themselves, which they would make more money, and that's another point for another day. If they did it themselves, that money would be going back into the NHS and not through a property into some property's developer's pocket. I just can't see. What my fear is that this is going to come back to us, and we're going to see taller buildings and more flats on this site, and the officers are going to say to us, well, you've approved the previous one, so your hands are tied. Now I don't want to be. This is one application that I do not want to be tied on. I've lived in Northwood Hills for over 35 years. The health provision is one of the main thing that really needs to do that. We have a lot of elderly residents, so I'm in favour of that element of it. But I just want to make sure that maybe the NHS should say, right, we'll build the 5 million and then we'll recoup our money from the developer, rather than someone's got to come up front with this money, and I don't see how this can be done. And that's my biggest concern. The report is full of things about overlooking. Even our officers are saying that there is a problem with overlooking, but we're going to accept it because it's the whole thing. The proposal for not having social housing on here is phenomenal. This is a fantastic opportunity for us to have social housing on, key worker housing on, all of those things. We're not doing that. I don't understand. And officers might sort of say I'm stepping out here, but as Councillor Duncan said earlier, we've been down this road so many times in Useley and everywhere else with health centres, with the NHS saying they're going to do this, and then it doesn't happen. And that's my fear about this. As I said, the report is littered with things that I just, every page, the parking provision, I tend to disagree with, obviously, the petition. Sorry, Andrew. When high power is in this area, I don't understand why there is so much parking when we have a station just up the road, which is less than 5 minutes walking. So you could have actually done something better with the environment on this one than that. And I'm concerned about, I suppose my biggest thing is that we're giving planning permission because we all want to help the NHS, but we're then saying, well, they're not going to do it, they're going to hand it over to someone else who's not even at the table here at the moment. That's where I'm going with this. I'm sure I'll let others come up with this, but
I think there was a question in there somewhere, and I think the point around funding and where the money's coming from is probably outside of our jurisdiction, although a rightful concern. When it comes down to safeguarding, and we've all seen it as members of planning committees, they come back, developers come back a bit of a time later with a new scheme. Whether we can safeguard ourselves against that, I'll leave that to officers and maybe legal to help us with that, but we have to determine what is in front of us tonight. That's what we've got in front of us. I don't know if Mandip wanted to come in and try and pick up Councillor Higgins' points.
So when the application was assessed by our external viability consultants, we as officers raised the question, if the development is unviable, then of course how will you build the new hospital. And the NHS sent us additional information about recycling of funding to ensure that they use money from other sources in order to make sure the delivery comes forward. And I'm not saying that that's correct, but they gave us their assurances in writing that that's a model that they've used in other boroughs. There's a health centre in Chiswick that they had as an example for us. And that's why we felt, yes, it's unviable at the moment, but they are willing to commit other funding to its delivery.
Councillor Higgins is itching to come back.
I'm champing at the bit here, but yeah, I was just going to let Jamie go first.
I have a slightly different way of answering the same question. So, as members know, I've actually been at the council for quite some time now. It's actually about, I think it's over 15 years. And so I have seen I have been, as head of planning, approved a number of healthcare proposals where basically you've had a private developer and we've negotiated part of the major site be effectively set aside, maybe a building up to shell be fitted out, or a range of different heads of terms, and they haven't come forward. The one that is still happening, to the best of my knowledge, is going to happen, is the vinyl factory, which interestingly is the one of the 4 or 5 examples I can think of that was subject to a detailed viability appraisal process that involved all the relevant parties in effect, and did involve the council having an external viability consultant to check, obviously, that everything was right and proper, to put simplistically. So it wasn't by accident I cross-referenced that earlier, because we have, as I say, been here once before, not an identical set of circumstances, but there are some parallels. So it is complex, the viability side of things, and so I would simply say that I'm afraid members have to put some weighting on the fact that the council has appointed a viability consultant that has signed off on the financials of this. And the other point I was going to say, and I know it's slightly digressing from the point you were making, Councillor Higgins, but when I started here in 2006, not very soon after I started, I actually visited this particular site for a site visit and a pre-application discussion. And almost 15 years later, I'd be quite keen to approve an application and see a health centre delivered in effect. And I know it's been referenced by the petitioner and others about some of the faults with the scheme, and we've been very transparent on those. And I just wanted to say as a final point, I would actually recommend, Councillor Duncan did raise some issues with windows at the top right-hand corner of this slide, and I would recommend you delegate to me to word a condition that's later agreed by the chairman and Labour lead, so that we can ensure that I'm able to address all. There was a sort of multitude of issues that Councillor Duncan was raising, and if you're happy to delegate that to me, I'd recommend that to you. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, James. Useful as ever.
Can I come back?
Do you want to come back on that, Councillor Higgins?
Yes, I must come back. Mandy, you stated that dialogue has happened, so why is that not in the report? And I asked the NHS directly, how much is it going to cost? 5 million. I asked how were you going to fund it, and they said through the sale of the thing. There is nothing, what you've just commented on, in this report, or what these two fine people have said, that they will fund any shortfall or whatever, or fund it from different revenues. The vinyl factory is totally, I appreciate it's got a health centre. I think that is as far as it is joined up. The vinyl factory is a massive site which is generating loads of housing. This isn't. So as long as there is some sort of condition or something that states what you have said has been written to you and stated in the report, then I'd be happy to say, yeah, great, we want to go forward to this. But at this present moment in time, the information that I've sat here and been given is not to that. So that's all I'll say on that.
Did you want to come back on any of those points, Mandit?
We were provided with the correspondence, so we can add it as an approved document to the plans list, if that would provide comfort that that's part of our decision-making process. So that would be condition number 2 or 3. The approved document list could include the letter that we've received from the NHS Property Services.
Okay. Leon, do you want to confirm that?
Yeah, that would seem the most appropriate way to add it to document list. It wouldn't be an informative or anything. It would be adding it to the document list so it's transparent.
And it's a matter of public record then as well? Yeah, okay. Thank you. Right, I've got Councillor Chapman followed by Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Chairman. I very much associate myself with Councillor Higgins' misgivings, including the sort of the more general things he's alluded to. The only thing I would say that I differ with him is my worry about the parking. Can officers, and I suppose this is specifically for Dr Tilley, can officers confirm what the PTAL is for this area and whether the projected parking spaces is adequate? My other question relates to, and you'll be pleased to know, relates to waste management. If you take, for example, Block B, I normally refer to them as bin stores, but they're referred to here as refuse lobbies, which seems a bit posh for me, but there you go. Obviously, you've got the 2 bin stores, refuse lobbies on the ground floor. It looks to me like the horizontal distance from the flats to the rear is more than 30 metres. Also, immediately outside the 2 refuse lobbies, you've got parking. So you're going to have to move commercial waste bins or whatever is past the parking, a lot of it disabled parking to access the waste vehicle. Also, it looks to me like there's no turning circle for a waste vehicle, so it's basically going to have to reverse in or reverse out with blues and twos and alarms, etc. So I'd just like officers to comment about those 2 points. Thank you.
Okay. Who wants to pick up the first one? Do you want to pick up the waste one, Alan, as that was the last one?
Thank you, Chairman. I can take the PTAL question. The site is PTAL 2 bordering PTAL B. It literally is half and half. If we accept that the site is PTAL 2, the London plan would allow a maximum of 47 car parking spaces. If we accept that the site as a whole is PTAL 1, it increases to 93 car parking spaces. So the 69 proposed is in between 47 and 93, and I'm satisfied that that's the appropriate amount of car parking for the residential element. For the medical centre, the health hub, there'll be 19 car parking spaces at the rear for staff, and the local plan requires 2 car parking spaces per consulting room, which would equate to the provision of 33 car parking spaces at the front for patients and visitors. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay. Thank you, Alan. You okay with that, Councillor Chapman? Yeah? Okay. Good. Well, I've got Councillor Duncan followed by Councillor Cawthorne. Sorry, did you want to come back?
Sorry, no, I also asked about the waste management and the bins.
You did indeed, yes. That's very remiss of me.
Refuse lobbies, yes.
Would you like to pick those up, please, Alan?
Yes. Thank you, Chairman. Refuse collection would be from the rear, where those 19 car parking spaces are, and there is reference to there need to be management of the staff car parking at the time of refuse collection, which is not an ideal situation. However, there is a condition requiring a car parking management plan and a service and delivery plan. So in those conditions, we would want full details of how it would actually be achieved. But Councillor has picked up that vehicles would need to be manoeuvred in the staff car park for refuse to be collected, but the detail we'd want to see in the service delivery plan, in the car parking management plan. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Chapman, did you want to come back on that?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I wasn't so much, I'm not saying I'm not interested in the medical centre element, but it was more, if you take the example of Block B, the residential Block B, as I say, immediately in front of the refuse lobbies, you've got residents' car park, and indeed a lot of it's disabled, so it's not clear to me how you'll get through, for want of a better term, how you'll get through that wall of cars. I believe also there's guidance as to the maximum distance, so I don't think it's viable to sort of go to the end of the pavement, then get onto the road and come back, so to speak. I believe there's a maximum distance involved there as well. Thank you, Chairman.
No, thank you. I think it's a good bit of detail that we need to understand. So, in terms of distances and turning circles, I think was the point raised there.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Between the line of car parking and then you've got a grey area of surfacing, and then you've got Block B, that's indicated as a walkway. So I understand that the refuse bins would be dragged towards the north, ready for collection. So they'd be taken between the Block B and between the line of parked cars. Thank you, Chairman.
I'm sure Councillor Chapman would ask this question, but do we know how far that is? And is it within policy?
The maximum drag distance I understand to be 20 metres, and on the basis that each car parking space is 2.4 metres, 10 car parking spaces would be 24 metres, so it's around 10. So it appears to be within our limits, Chairman.
Okay. Any comeback on that, Councillor?
So, yes, thank you, Chairman. So we're saying that the drop-off point is also the people drop-off point is also the commercial, the waste pick-up point, so to speak. Can I have any feedback regarding the lack of a turning circle and the vehicle will have to reverse?
I do know, Councillor Chairman, that the maximum reversing distance for a council refuse vehicle is 12 metres.
Are we within that?
I believe, yes, sir, it would be. Yes. Thank you, Chairman.
Anything else, Councillor?
It's marginal, but no, that's okay. Thank you, Chair.
I saw you diligently calculating there, so...
I was going to take my shoes and socks off in a minute just to get above 10, but yeah.
Please don't do that.
It was the prospect of taking these off that made me sort of not bother.
Okay, thank you. Right, some good conversations going on here, but I've got Councillor Cawthorne who indicated.
I did. A couple of questions, actually. One relating to overlooking and the way it's dealt with on page 121 in the report. We seem to be dealing with it from a perspective of distance rather than the impact of on overlooking of the height of the proposed development. Now, I'm wondering whether height comes into play at all in this equation. If so, where? Or is it one of those less satisfactory aspects that were being suggested that we throw into the mix as part of the overall planning assessment? So is height part of this? And I'm just wondering why it's not referred to, unless I've missed it. That's my first question. My second one relates on page 68, comments about waste. I'm not sure what Thames Water is saying about the adequacy of the existing foul water drainage infrastructure. I just want some comfort that that has been addressed to the satisfaction of the utility company. So 2 questions there, please.
Okay, Mandip, you okay to pick those up?
Councillor Cawthorne, with regard to page 68, so those are informatives that Thames Water have asked us to impose and notify the applicant that during construction they must notify them and get the relevant other consents. So those are informatives on page 68 and 69, notifying the applicants that there is other work to do with Thames Water. So they are satisfied, they haven't raised an objection, but Thames Water have asked for that information to be put on the planning decision notice. With regard to overlooking, I just want to clarify, are you talking about overlooking or the height of the building? So overlooking is measured in separation distances, and you're correct, it doesn't take account of whether you're on the first floor or the 5th floor. It's just a calculation in distance from one habitable room window to another habitable room window. I think the question you're asking is about overlooking into, I assume, the gardens if you're at a higher height?
Yes, I mean, I would have thought some of the concerns about overlooking would be based upon the height of some of the proposed developments. So I'm just wondering how that weaves its way into our assessment of the overall impact.
It does. It's simply assessed on the separation distances from one habitable room window to another. So it has been assessed to be satisfactory. So we have overlooking, the primary concerns with overlooking came from the Neil Close residential properties, which are, I show you on the screen, it's these ones here. That's probably the closest pinch point where there were habitable room windows proposed within overly close proximity to existing habitable room windows. The separation distances from Sovereign Court and Juniper Court are within the planning policy guidance and comply in effect. I hope that's useful.
Thank you.
Okay. You indicating, Councillor Higgins?
I know there's other people. So I think we're trying to pick up on page 121 is the overlooking, and it says that the applicant has now revised the layout and composition of front. Because as Hillingdon Local Authority, we have some minor transgressions. God, it's getting late. My teeth are falling out. Where noted. So I think that's the confusion for me. But you said it's been dealt with. And the other, if I may, I'm sorry to butt in before you, Janet. On page 132, policy DMHB 15. I don't understand why we said that seeks to ensure all new developments safe and attractive public-private promotes. This is supported by policy. Are we saying that we only if this should have been a condition anyway, shouldn't it?
We do have a secure by design condition,
yeah,
making sure that there is a secure by design assessment of the new health facility as well as the new residential property. So it would in effect require 2 certificates or certifications to be presented.
Thank you. Councillor Duncan.
Thank you. It is difficult to approve these when we so very much want the health centre and do not want there to be a lot more housing with, you know, some compromises in them. But I do feel fairly reassured by the fact that this is an NHS building. It is an existing public health building, and so we're not dealing with a private developer who's just, you know, coming in. I mean, the health centre built in my own ward, West Drayton, never became used for health purposes, and it's now a Sainsbury's. So that's the road we don't want to go down. But I do feel some assurance about this, and also the fact there's a Section 106, a legal agreement, which says that the health centre must be open before any of the residential units can be occupied. And with a legal agreement, we know that if there's an infringement of that, it's not a question of lengthy appeals, you can go straight to court. So on that basis, I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation. But there are just a couple of points that I would like clarified. I would like it, I don't know what heating there will be. Manjit did refer to the overheating condition being put in. Thank you for that. But we have become aware that sometimes where there are solar panels and it goes to a heating scheme which is managed for the block, that doesn't always benefit the development. So I know that at the moment it's difficult in terms of policy. It's a matter that's being looked at, but can we put that in, or something to relate to that, please? And I think the charging of the parking electric points got a bit confused. I just want to be sure that there is a minimum of 7, which means a car can charge overnight, is my understanding. And I understand that in some developments this is being reduced to a level that really is pretty useless. You've got to have the car there all day and all night for it to be charged. We don't want to encourage that sort of development. We're meant to be moving towards a more sustainable future than that. So if it's possible to put in minimum levels when it says normal, hopefully that would encompass that. And I would be very happy to delegate this whole issue that I raised about the windows facing the rear of Neil Close and how it's been dealt with in order to overcome the overlooking, because at the moment in those single bedrooms there's no way of people who may be trapped in there by fire of getting out other than smashing the windows, which I'm sure the fire brigade would do. But it's that, you know, that's not a good way to build, really. What I'm saying is it's fine having Oreo windows, but let them be deep enough that a person can actually be rescued from. In this case, they're not, as we can see from the plans. But if I can ask if the committee, we all agree that that be delegated to James, hopefully something can be worked out on that basis, please. I'd be happy to move it on that basis. Thank you.
I've made a note of that from the earlier debate, but I think James wants to come in on electric charging points.
Oh no, it's just quickly on the overheating. So we have the policy in the London plan, and we've used a standard condition, and so Mandy was basically saying, can officers authority to add the standard condition. We understand the mayor's this is one of the areas the mayor's going to produce some supplementary guidance on, and when that guidance is published, we'd potentially be able to, I'm going to use a non-technical term, beef up the overheating reason, but we can't do it at this stage. So I think we need to wait till the guidance is published.
I think we already have, there already is a plan, there already is a policy in the London plan which we should be implementing, and in fact we did take steps to enforce this in a development which I know James, you know, was very active in securing that. So although it may not be in our own plan at the moment, it is part of the London plan whose policies we have to enact and abide by. So if it can be done under that, and I know that everything is being reviewed at the moment, but there is a policy that I think we can put this in on. So hopefully we can. Thank you.
That's something we can pick up.
If I may propose a small compromise, if the final word in the overheating condition is agreed through the chairman and Labour lead, rather than you just saying completely delegating to me, that would enable us to explore whether we can expand upon the standard condition or not, and in a transparent way I'd be able to go through that process with chairman and Labour lead. As I was saying earlier, my recommendation would be, if you're happy to, that extra condition, the wording would be agreed with chairman and Labour lead, so that I could do the two conditions in effect through yourself, chairman, and the Labour lead.
I'm happy with that, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, I can see a couple of other councillors indicating, but I just want to try and take stock of where we are so that we know what we're debating on. So we've got 3 additional conditions, verbal conditions that were suggested earlier on. One we just talked about, which will be delegated to myself and the Labour lead to finalise the wording. We're also talking about a change to the header terms, section A1. We've also talked about the subtle change to the window configuration that was talked about later on, delegating that to James to work on. And we've also got this additional document which we made public, which gives hopefully members comfort that, you know, that the finances for the future safeguarding are secured. So that's really just to sort of summarise where we are before we continue the debate. There were a couple of points that I'd like to pick up following the discussion, but I'm going to pause and let Councillor Higgins pick up. I'm sure he had a couple of points.
Thank you, Chairman. I think Councillor Duncan's slightly wrong. This isn't in the report. It is that the development for the housing will be given out. It's not the project at the moment of an NHS project, and we have to make that very clear. Many people know me this, but I feel that this is maybe something that we should actually go on a site visit for. I'm concerned with Neil's Close and the proximity of that and the housing. There's other elements in there that I'm concerned. So I would propose that on the floor after, obviously, my fellow members have asked the questions that they wanted to answer. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Chairman. I was actually going to propose a site visit myself, and I'm happy to second that. I think physically, if you look at the site, it's two separate sites, and you almost become a bit schizophrenic, to be honest, because if you look at the medical centre, it's a definite thumbs up on what we want, and if you look at the housing, it's not quite so definite, shall we say. I actually looked, and officers do use the phrase on balance, which always means that it's not an easy one. I think it's fair to say everybody's either 49% against or 49% in favour. I think it'd be, I agree with Councillor Higgins, I think it'd be very useful to have a site visit to fully appreciate the impact on adjacent streets and to actually explore the site ourselves. It would also, frankly, give officers a chance to consolidate the various addendums into one new pack that we can properly look at again. So on that basis, I'd like to support what Councillor Higgins has said.
Okay, thank you. We'll get to Councillor Cawthorne and try and make hay with that one. So, Councillor Cawthorne.
No, I won't say too much other than say I do support that. I think as planning members we're used to looking at the pros and cons of things and looking at where the overall planning balance lies in applications, and there are some very fine judgments to be made. My sense is that on something of this magnitude, the committee, or indeed and the community, are being asked to swallow rather a lot that is not acceptable on the basis that there's a big gain, and we accept that there's a big gain to be had here. But I think we do need to make sure that we fully understand the impact on local residents and we weigh that into the mix properly. So I fully support that, and I say that with due respect to officers. These things are subjective. So, yeah, I support a site visit. Thank you.
Okay. Any other? Councillor Yarrow.
Well, clearly, I also support a site visit. I've never seen a report written where there are so many pages of objections, and clearly good objections, well written. So I think it's crying out for a site visit.
Okay. Right. Let's try and pull this together. So we were moved by Councillor Duncan, but we weren't seconded. And then Councillor Higgins moved that we defer and go for a site visit. That was seconded by Councillor Chapman and was supported by other members. Anybody else wishing to contribute? No? Okay, so we're moved and seconded to defer and attend for a site visit. That your understanding of it, James? Yep. So let's take a vote on that now then. So all those in favour of deferring for a site visit, can I have you raise your hands? So that's Councillor Duncan. Yep, so that's unanimous. Whew, okay. Thank you very much, everybody, and thank you to the petitioners, thank you to the applicants, thank you to the Ward Councillor, and thank you to those watching on YouTube. Thank you to those officers that have supported proceedings this evening, and thank you to members for really scrutinising tonight's applications and doing what we do best as a council and as a planning committee. So thank you very much. We will close the meeting now. Thank you.
I'd like to thank you as well, Chairman. Done a good job.